In this video, I'm going to go through the basics of how to open data in AutoQuis. AutoQuis is part of the AutoVectis suite, and it's used when you want to open data in interchange formats or from text files. AutoQuis won't open mass spectrometry vendor files directly, so if your data is in a format like .raw, you'll need to convert it to mz5 or mzml using the MS-convert tool from AutoWizard, and we've got a separate video on that. But if your data is already in an mzml, mz5 or text format, then AutoQuis is the way to get it into an AutoVectis workflow. This is the AutoQuis user interface. And our first job is to import a spectrum for onwards processing. AutoQuis can open data in text format, or mzml, or mz5. mz5 files contain exactly the same information as mzml files, but they're faster to load and they'll take up less space on disk, so they're the file format we recommend. As for mzml files, mz5 files can be created using AutoWizard's MS-convert tool, and there's a separate video showing you how to do that. But for now, let's just choose an mz5 file to load, and we'll do that by clicking on this Browse button. Once AutoQuis has imported a spectrum, it will transfer it to AutoPeeker for peak picking. Within AutoPeeker, you'll have the opportunity to explore the spectrum in order to identify the correct signal-to-noise threshold to use for the peak picking. So you modify the signal-to-noise ratio to use for the peak picking process using this control. And then when you're happy with the level, you can click the Accept button to import the peak list back into AutoQuis. Back in AutoQuis, the main spectrum display now shows the imported spectrum and the peak centroids in yellow. In this example file, there was only a single spectrum in the MZ5 data. But what happens if you want to load up chromatography data or direct infusion data where every spectrum was recorded individually? Well, AutoQuis can also open those kinds of files. So let's see how that process is different. Because this data contains 76 spectra, AutoQuis recognizes that it contains LC or LC-like data, and so it opens it up in the SmartSum tool. SmartSum will let us select individual spectra or spectral ranges to co-add into a single mass spectrum. Down here you can see the chronogram output that will show the total ion chromatogram, the base peak chromatogram, and if you've selected any extracted ions to plot, it will show the extracted ion chromatogram. However, in this case the intensity is so low it just plots at the bottom of the screen. You can identify which spectra to co-add using this control. Here you can identify individual spectra separated by commas, and spectral ranges separated by dashes. As you type in this control, the selected spectra are highlighted on the chronogram display in green. If the source isn't behaving well, then it could be inconsistent and you could suffer spectral dropouts in the data. You could select only the good spectra manually, but that takes time and it may be more efficient to do it automatically using this control. Here you can include upper and lower intensity limits for the base peak chromatogram, total ion chromatogram, or extracted ion chromatograms, and only include those spectra within those ranges in the final co-added result. But in this case, the source looks consistent enough that we'll just accept all of these spectra to be co-added, and we do that by clicking the Accept Regions button. So AutoQuis is now extracting each one of those spectra from the file and co-adding them into a single mass spectrum. And then, as before, it sends that spectrum to AutoPeeker for peak picking. Just as for the individual spectrum, you can now explore this data to identify the right peak picking threshold to use. And then when you're happy, click the Accept button. If you want to export views of the spectrum to use as an illustration in presentations or publications, then you can do that too. First, you need to zoom to the part of the spectrum you want to illustrate, and then click here to export it as a figure. In the Export Graph module, you can choose which parts of the spectrum to display, the color scheme of individual parts, and you can even set specific height or width values. Then you can export the spectrum either in vector format as a PDF or as a PNG file. Of course, the main point of AutoQuis is to let you import data into AutoVectis workflows. So having imported this file, how can I now pass it onto other parts of AutoVectis? For that, we need to use this export control. From here, we can export the spectrum and peak list to AutoSeeker for top-down assignment, to AutoLogous for complex organic matter or direct infusion metabolomics assignment, or to Discharger for high molecular weight charge state deconvolution. And because of the contents of this data, let's export it to AutoLogous. So the system is prompting us to save the data in a TDMS format that is used by AutoVectis for downstream processing. It will automatically generate a file name based on the original input file, but you can edit that here if you choose. Then when you're happy with the file name, hit OK. Once the data is saved, AutoVectis will open up AutoLogous in order to continue the processing of this data. So I hope this guide to the basic functions of AutoQuis for importing mzml or mz5 data has been useful. As always, if you've got any questions, please contact us at autovectis@gmail.com.